Pounders, welcome back. Today we're going to have a BBM5 focused discussion on the art of drafting a zero RB team, what it means, what are the best ways to do it, where's the entry point for zero RB, and how do you get different from the other team's chalk RB start. So glad to welcome a fellow content creator, but on more of the writing side for Spike Week. Billy, welcome to the live stream.
What's up? How are you doing? Glad to be here tonight.
Yeah, I'm glad you reached out. I always like to bring people on that can provide some of the data research as well, because a lot of the stuff that we do, it's a mix of both data, feels, and yeah, we try to keep it somewhere in the middle there. But tell us a little bit about yourself. When did you get into Bestball and writing content?
Yeah, so a little over a year ago, I got my master's in data science completed, and after that I was like, okay, what am I going to do with my nights? And I was like, okay, I'll take this like obsession with fantasy sports to another level, and create a Twitter account. Or well, the Twitter account was just there, and I was very dormant, and
Yeah, right, right.
was like started posting visuals that I thought were cool, and that was around the time when the Bestball data bowl was happening. So I was like, oh,
Right.
this is really cool data set that I can play with. And that got me into like what is Underdog and understanding the game that is best ball. And since I was doing data work on it, I was like, okay, I've got to play it too. So started playing and did over 100 drafts last year. It was a ton of
Mhm.
fun. Just kind of fully leaned in. Didn't play any of Best Ball Mania because I was like, okay, I'm just going to play a ton of the lower stake stuff. Got enough
Okay.
volume in. But then this year, I was definitely playing in Best Ball Mania. But so I did that, and but I was all just by myself, and jumped in like the Spike Week Discord, and they like had a posting about we're looking for someone to do some data work. We have a bunch of stuff, but we just need someone to like write some things, and you have kind of a bunch of freedom. And so I
Nice.
jumped on that and been connected with them, doing a variety of different sports. I grew up playing baseball and actually played baseball in college.
Hell yeah.
So the like best ball for baseball is a ton of fun because
Mm.
baseball, like fantasy baseball's a grind, like the full
Oh,
season,
I
whereas you
love
can kind
that.
of set it and forget it. So that's been a ton of fun.
I
But
bet.
yeah, I've been really enjoying like doing the best ball stuff.
That's awesome. And do you do dailies at all too, or are you just basically season long grinder, get the drafts in before the season starts?
Play a little bit of dailies. I don't know, I haven't really fully leaned in yet.
Okay.
Um, but I do just but I feel like I really like to set a plan for my portfolio before the season, like but of like season of drafting, and then
Right.
go to execute that plan.
Right. Right.
So I don't have that strategy there from like a DFS perspective.
Mhm.
I do think that it's something I want to get to after I make some big tournament, of course.
Very cool. Very cool. And now I think we have to start with this question. If there was only one draft strategy you could use for NFL for the rest of the offseason, what would it be?
Well, it is zero RB. I am doing 100% zero RB, and
Okay.
we're gonna get to it in why I think that it's like important for me, who as
Mhm.
someone who is definitely getting volume down, but I'm not maxing every tournament. I think it gives me like a way to get like elevated exposure to certain players within a structure. So I think like that I am like it is what I am doing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very
What about
cool.
you?
I'm definitely a mix. I like to have a mix of every strategy. It's tough for me to actually say like I'm going to have this much or this much, but I do look at the
Hmm.
portfolio. I do look at my pairings between especially like the first 4 rounds. My QB pairings is something I'm getting into. Like I'll look at Chase with Burrow. Okay, and this is something I found through like a correlation engine that we're coming out with soon. Like I had 50% Waddle. I'm like, oh
Hmm.
shit, like that's obviously a hole in my portfolio. So like being able to identify that quickly and fix it, I think is something that's just like a whole separate strategy. But yeah, I sort of
Hmm.
let the draft come to me. I think we were talking a little bit beforehand, and like, how do you stay so true to that plan of okay, I want to do 100% zero RB, but Pacheco just fell to me 17 picks past ADP.
I think is so one that's like there's pure commitment to it. Like it's not
Yeah.
even in my like it's if I there's part of me that wants to come out with like true zero RB rankings where you have Christian McCaffrey sitting at 9. Like you're never gonna get him. Do something dumb like that.
Well,
But like
if
where you could you really could set it up so you have all these elevated like other
mhm,
players, non-running backs, and then just kind of chunk them all together later. And if any
right,
value was like in the window, you kind of could do it. But
right.
yeah, I think that I just kind of just like fully commit to it.
Okay. And I like that, but
Hmm.
oof, man, for me it's different. For me it's different. I do want a large portion of zero RB
Hmm.
in my portfolio. I'm still a sucker for, players in ranges. I think is important to me. Like, how certain are you that those receivers separate from the running backs in the first round in a 1 week contest? And last year was off the running backs in the first round and was off, including CMC, unfortunately. A lot of
Hmm.
JJ and Chase at 1 and 2, CMC at 3. So getting around like 5 or 6%, which obviously not ideal, but having 2% Eckler, 2% Kelsey ends up helping a lot and having 11% Lamb. Um, so it didn't work last year, but in a single game slate, we know that CMC can crack the code over any other receiver in the first round. When you get the first pick, do you feel bad at all or any sort of remorse when you click? I'm assuming it's CD.
Yeah, I do, and it's like it's well the part that I also struggle with. So I'm like is you got to keep it flat. You can't just like be like, okay, if it is a perfectly flat distribution of all your picks, you're just gonna run a bunch of CD Lamb and then
Right,
none of the
right.
other guys within the that. So like the whole point is like if you're gonna go zero RB and just say within the first round,
Mm,
you have 3 players you gain back. So that's like 25% that you can just distribute across. So like you could if you were just to say I'm going to commit to the bit, you could have like these really awesome exposures to every receiver in the first
right.
round. So that's like definitely something that I think that's it just kind of is like an advantage that's committing to the structure is on less volume you can get just like an equivalent count.
Okay. How about where is the point for you guys? I think I saw the definition on the Spike Week website is outside of the top 24 RBs. Is that still how you identify it? So no RBs in the top 24 would be a
I
zero
think
RB.
so. I
Is
think
that like a
so.
general guide? Like it's kind of a little fluid.
Yeah, I think so, and it's definitely fluid. It's definitely fluid,
Okay.
where you're gonna have to start. I don't know. I think the whole point of zero RB is that you have an ability to create an advantage at wide receiver and then also quarterback and tight end too.
Hmm.
And then you're going to build it through like just a sheer volume. And you kind of somewhere in this range, I think on any given draft, it's going to change, but you
Okay.
probably want to get to 6 or 7, round 7 before you can start to consider it.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
which still gives you a whole like list of these guys right here that can get 2, 3, 4 of them, and you can build yourself a Christian McCaffrey kind of upside.
Okay. I like that. I like that. I can get behind that. I think hard rules are almost a bad thing in fantasy because you could have,
Hmm.
right. Najee is obviously the RB 23 here. He could fall behind Warren pretty easily at pick 91. And I'm just interesting from a data standpoint how you guys are pulling that. Uh, is it strict off of RB 24 rankings wise?
I'll have to ask Hacker how he does that.
Okay.
For the point of the article, I didn't really want to contest the what is the definition. I
Okay.
really kind
Okay.
of wanted to show. Do you happen to have that up by chance?
Bingo.
Cool. So show that first. Just line chart right there. Cool. So really what I was doing here was just so like the rate of how often people are drafting like running backs 0 through whatever end round. So
Yep.
0 through 3, 0 through 5, 0 through 7.
Mhm.
And as we all know, who've been playing for a little bit and before my time, you can see that like wide receivers going crazy, and then the opposite impact is running backs.
Right.
Um, but that edge case that's 0 through 7, um, you like it really. I mean, it has been elevated, but it hasn't got. I don't think it is as prevalent to go
Mhm.
5 receivers, elite tight end, elite quarterback, as you would think. Which I think
Mhm.
it is. Like that's. I feel like that's a comfortable way to draft,
Okay.
personally. So um, it's just kind of like I wanted to show here that like even if you're doing 10% on your personal portfolio, that is over what the fields percentage is by 5 times.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I thought that this was like an interesting way to show that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. If you guys, this is Best Ball Mania 2 here. This is Best Ball Mania 3 and Best Ball Mania 4. The separate data points. I think this was after that stream. I think I saw something on this that they mentioned like the past years how zero RB basically performed, and you got this huge spike over the week of teams drafting zero RB, which is pretty funny. But
Yeah, if you look at BBM2, like there's a little down and all the way on the left, and then it goes way up. And
yeah,
there's like a Eric Bimefor, Pat Carane,
okay,
and that crew
yeah,
all had they had a podcast, and
mhm.
then very coincidentally timed, it went right through the
Yeah,
roof.
yeah. It's tough.
And
It's tough to have that kind of influence too, especially giving out, maybe some of those hacks, right? And knowing that, okay, I jump into a room, my guys probably aren't going to be there, and that's okay. That's just something that part of building the
Mhm.
community and informing people is all about. Um, yeah, Versailles, 100%. You're winning at other positions when you give up that RB. It's definitely the main idea. Question from McCaffrey, Billy. Any guess as to what percent will be for BBM5?
I haven't gone through this exercise. I think it would be
Mm,
noteworthy. I'm gonna like think about that and come back to it at a
cool,
later date
cool.
when I can do something about it. But
Yeah,
I mean, I would assume it's some level of elevated, but it is just kind of harder to do. Like I think that the commitment to get to zero RB, you have to be intentional with it
yeah.
because you're going to start off with a draft, and there's only you might get a receiver value maybe, but there's like
Always hope.
yeah, but you're gonna run into some running back that feels pretty good, and it's that how are you going to be able to commit to it for 7 rounds
Mm,
of a running back that feels like the better value?
hmm.
Um, so it just like I don't know what the numbers will be this year. I would assume it's some level of elevated, but I don't think it's going to be like the. I bet you if you put a Twitter poll, the number would be like 10%, and I bet you there's
Yeah.
no way it's going to be that close.
I I do think it's interesting. I'm curious on your thought about drafting zero RB early, right? When you have the
Hmm.
least amount of information and maybe a lot of ADP movement that hasn't happened yet. That stagnant stage in the middle of the draft season, sort of like right now, where you're not getting a ton of updates. You're getting, Trevor Lawrence throwing the ball to an open Brian Thomas Jr. being uncovered with no pads on.
Yeah,
In the post saying thread the needle. It's like
yeah.
that's what we're getting right now for updates. So drafting zero RB now versus people that are drafting zero RB later in the draft season when you have the most amount of information.
I think that there is like I mean there's two very distinct windows on what the edge you can gain in zero RB, right? The when we first started drafting, there were players that were now no longer available. Like
Mhm.
I
Yep.
feel like I feasted and like I set up zero RB is great for that early window. And as you said,
Yeah.
it's great for that late window too when you have a feeling that Kyron could be something, right?
Right. Right.
So this dead window, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's good for all windows, but I could see where there's like very clear opportunities to
Yeah.
leverage the strategy if you're kind of like barbelling it.
Yeah. Like leaning into like for the big board example would be like the Zamir Whites, the Singletaries, and then they end up with, you know, they're the guy in the offense as of right now. Now you're like,
Hmm.
okay, if I was drafting zero RB on those teams, I'm going to have a potential enormous edge on the field there. I think so much Brian Thomas. There we go. There it is.
And I think this year is just like a wonderful year for it, just because of the way that the draft sets up.
Yeah.
I mean, you're getting like just such value, and this is a great
Mhm.
draft too. So, so I'll briefly explain what this is. What this is doing is just showing. So zero RB, I'm keeping it very basic here, zero through seven, just to kind of match with the visual above.
Okay.
Um, and so if you kind of just set a hard rule, I know hard rules aren't perfect, but if you were to do that,
Yeah.
this is kind of what your exposures, if you just teams that did that rule looked like. So very elevated at the beginning of the draft, your
Right.
receivers, your tight ends, your quarterbacks, and then very elevated running backs in the range that you would be stacking up
Yeah.
your volume,
Yeah.
right? And so this is why I'm going to put in volume this year, but like I believe that I get more bang for that volume from a count perspective. Kind of like my exposures are higher, but from like they're not. It's from a count. They're like more aligned with someone would do at 150
Mhm.
because you're able to get someone at 20%, and that's kind of what like the normal expectation for a running back that range. So as
Right.
long as I'm able to manage the combinatorial ownership within that range and
Mhm.
not just stack the same two players over and over and over again, I have like an ability to do more with less.
Yeah, I think you make a good point too that this year there is a good opportunity for zero RB, especially right now because you have that section of running backs and it's in that range of where you're going to start going zero RB, and no one knows what to do with like these 12, 10 running backs that basically go all in a line. So this the range where uh
Mm-hmm.
you're basically entering your first running back in the draft per strategy. Are you double tapping RB in this range to catch up right away, or is it not a rule you can sort of still put it off?
There's no rule here.
Yeah,
I think that
I don't mean rule, but like,
yeah,
do you
I'm
feel this is the best opportunity to sort of catch up at that position?
oh yeah, absolutely. I think
Okay,
there's a lot of people that I can see how it works. I think that if you and there's like multiple teams that if you kind of play like the different combinations, like
right,
Tennessee, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, if you kind of just highlight those, you can have
yeah,
like I think it's like it's pretty easy to get just kind of like get the different combinations of within that and you see how those will kind of hit. So
true.
they all could work together. So yeah, this is such a beautiful range for running backs this year.
What would your ideal backfield look like for running backs, and how many running backs are you stopping with typically in a zero RB build?
I think my favorite build's 2772. Um,
Okay.
very clean, simple. I think that
Who's your favorite entry running back for a zero RB build?
I mean this whole range. So Jonathan Brooks, I can see when he's going to hit, it's going to hit back weighted, and that's going to be awesome in a run first offense. What that will seem like.
Yeah.
Jalen Warren's great. Zach Moss, I think, is really gonna a pretty good option. Um, then I mean Tony Pollard, I'm less on, but I do see that
Okay.
like I do want to pick him because I mean like I'm picking so many running backs in this range.
Right.
A fade for me on a running back will probably be 8%,
Got it. Got it.
right?
Got it.
Which
Got to catch
is
up.
yeah, exactly when I have the ability to throw get to 20% pretty easily,
Mhm.
and it's just if you look at that visual, that's what the expectation is. That's not me being way above. That's me.
Right.
Look, if you have 17% of a running back in that range, that's like what you'd expect.
Got it.
Um,
So
so go ahead.
let's say we get Brooks and Warren, and we're at the 12 spot picking, so it's going to be a little bit. The next range is here with Tajay Spears, Chase Brown, Corum, and Elliott. Who would be your ideal double tap in this range? Building this out.
I think Spears is awesome, right?
Okay.
I think you can make a very clear an argument that he's the running back one on
Yep.
that team.
That's hilarious.
Um,
Yeah.
and you so I think that that's an avenue I've been going to. But then after this, there's like a whole list of running backs that I think that have pretty good avenues to running back two on their own team with
Mm,
nice consistent upside. Corum, awesome. Charbonnet, awesome. Lloyd, awesome. Kendra Miller, awesome. Ty Chandler. All of these fit the same role of if the guy ahead of them goes down,
mm,
big hit.
right.
And I'm willing to take multiple shots on them.
Hmm.
And just, like you said, like double tap like 4 or 5 in a row. It doesn't matter
Yep.
because when they hit, it's gonna like it's all the other ones that you miss in that range are gonna really be impactful anymore. Like
Okay.
if you had Kyron and you had 3 other duds running back twos, I think that you probably would have been fine last year. I should pull data on that to see what that looked like.
That'd be cool. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
With this starting with Brooks, Warren, Tajay Spears, you worried about Brooks starting slow at all or potentially missing games? Would that make you want to draft someone like a prototype player like Zeke that would potentially have more of a workload early or at least through the season? Um, has that
maybe, but I
has that
don't. Go ahead.
3-4 catch, median?
Maybe. So I think that I don't remember who said that. Like we should like try to time when players are going to score. We should just pick the players that we think are the best.
Hmm.
Well, and that's when, and also Warren and Spears, I feel pretty confident they're going to be relevant in their offenses from day one. So you get this like dual purpose from that one. So they have this
Okay.
contingent upside. They have functional points like right from day one. And their roles probably should be more of like the pass catching guys. So I think that like I don't know. There's like you look through this list, it's just like there's a whole list of them and RB2s um, with the very clear roles.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Who's your favorite between Brown, Corum, Elliott, Ford, Charbonnet?
So I have okay. So we'll go through them. I think that Brown, I get this. I get both sides of the
Uh
argument, right? Like
huh.
his statistics are probably heavily driven by a couple big plays, but those
Mhm.
couple big plays are what we're playing for here. So like, are we really going to nerf him for the thing that we want? Right?
Yeah,
Like
right. That's what we're looking
statistically,
for. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I get both sides of that. I think Corum actually is an interesting player this year because of um, is he just like Kyron, but maybe
A little
even a
more
little
athletic.
more athletic.
Yes. That's
So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
He has me moving Kyron all the way down to 40 right now, so it's
mhm,
on the most recent update.
yeah, and there's guys even further down. So player that I've been coming back to, if you want to scroll down a little bit, Antonio Gibson is a guy
Hell
who I've been
yeah.
liking.
Hell yeah.
They brought him in to get more explosive, I think, on that offense.
Mhm.
And if he just takes a passing role,
Yeah.
I, he also has again a great contingent upside. Doesn't really look like there's competition there, and he's
That's
got
the
a
biggest
solid
thing
role.
right
Uh
there.
huh.
Certainty at the RB2 position in May is huge. It's huge. He goes right
Mm-hmm.
next to Jaleel McLaughlin, where there's no certainty there. That's why I'm big on Algier and Gibson in this range. The contingent upside, I think for Algier is even bigger than Gibson if there's an injury to the RB1, but still very good. And you're getting that floor with Gibson too with the pass catching.
100%. Tyrone Tracy, people are like certain he's the running back too. I'm not certain he's the running back too.
Mm,
So like, yeah, as you said, it's like the certainty is such. There's so much value in that today.
it
Um,
really is.
let
It really
less
is.
so when we get to like closer to the season, but today, right
Yeah.
now, 100%.
Yeah, I like frameworking the
Mm-hmm.
thought process like that. I think that's really smart. Um, how many RBs? You said seven is basically your favorite 2 7 7 2. So how many receivers are you typically going through the first 5 rounds? And is this going to depend on stacks where maybe if you have AJ Brown, you're more likely to bring in a player like Hertz, and then to sort of reference the end of your article to switch to theirs, how likely are you to bring in the Philly double stack? And do you think that hurts you?
Um, so I think that I mean this is probably a whole nother conversation, but how like the flatness of these tiers are round 2 to 3, and then round 3.5 through 5 are probably all the same. So I do really love the elite quarterbacks and the elite tight ends this year.
Mhm.
Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. Um, I think that they did awesome last year and are cheaper. To me, doesn't make a ton of sense other than
Mhm.
like kind of like as a macro level, everyone decided to push them down a little bit, but I'll just take it. Um, but so you're saying that this like AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts, it was a lot chalkier when the tournament opened, but
Mhm.
Devonta's scooting up a little bit, and
He
I
is.
don't. It's not as easy anymore.
It's true.
Um, and that's Week 17's fault with CD Lamb just bringing him up, and then everyone's just like, he's now a
Right.
good pick. Like, what changed? Nothing changed.
Right. True. So true.
But
But he
there's
was
some
always
other ones.
underpriced. He was
He
always
always was
underpriced.
underpriced. Absolutely. Um, but so there's some ones that I think they're going to be pretty chalky. I think that, and you're kind of hinting at it in the bottom of the article. I was looking last year. I have this. I do the combinatorial analysis, and there was, if you were to go all the way down, there is the two-player pairing of like Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and T Higgins. Like, did you really want your Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow teams almost at a 50% rate having T Higgins bring back? I would have, if you had told me that, I would have been like, okay. If
Just give me
Jamar
someone else
Chase
in
and
that range.
yeah, if Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are the key to getting to the finals, and half of those teams have T Higgins, I'll take any other receiver in that range, and I have the leverage.
Right.
So, like, I don't know, you're not gonna be able to get super close on predicting these, but you can get like figure out which points that'll be. And some of this is smart. Like, if you have Jamar Chase and T Higgins, you should have Joe Burrow. But
It's
there's
true.
like the
It's true.
inverse of that may not always be the truth.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what I was showing here. And I think that Miami's probably one that could be doing this year.
Okay.
Houston's one that could be doing this year.
Yep.
Um,
The pocket passing QBs, elite
mhm,
offenses, basically, right? Is the ones that you're trying to double stack. I think I saw some of that same data hold true for a contest like Weekly Winners, where it's one out of, this year it's less, but last year was like a one out of 221,000. Was taking home that first place prize.
mhm,
And you saw the pocket passing QBs double stacked versus the rushing QBs double stacked in a contest like that, and that was obviously much higher for the pocket passing QBs.
mhm. Yeah. So like, I think that I know you've been doing a lot of content on like the Eliminator and the weekly winners, and I don't really touch that. I do need to get involved in that more, just because like these games, you got to understand the meta so well if you feel like you're
Yeah.
going to do well at it. So, trying to figure out this one right now, but
Mm.
I see your point for sure.
Yeah, I'll pull it up really quick because I do think there is some relevance and some points that sort of are interchangeable here between contests too. That sort of just even touch on this, right? So like if I'm double stacking it, how often is it going to get there? And then if it's going to be this chalky, like it better friggin' work, right?
Hmm.
So I didn't go into individual teams, and I think that's really next to go into how many times was it a Burrow double stack? How many times was it a Jordan Love double stack? But going into the pocket passing QB wide receiver, it finished 6 times out of 124 that the pocket passing QBs finished, and this was basically data from the top 10 teams week 1 through 17, grabbing 170 teams
Hmm.
worth of data. The double stack in a contest like that at least didn't get there. Now BBM, not that big, right? So like the finals
Hmm.
is going to be 500 versus 221,000.
Yeah.
So the concentrated bet, it doesn't need to hit as much of a ceiling as this contest, but it's still interesting to sort of pair off and look at.
And sometimes it's logic. It's like the logical play to do, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it just is like, what are we doing? And like
Right, right.
Anthony Richardson, like Jalen Hurts do not need to be tied up that much to their receivers. Um, so I think it's just like, is that being conscious of that, and like was that
Mm,
intentional? So like the we manage our exposures. One thing, Spike, we have some great tools about like the combinatorial exposures as well.
Yep.
So I think that that's like a very important piece to portfolio management.
Yeah, it's really important to keep up throughout the whole off season too, and making sure you're getting
Hmm.
different places you want to. I think the other thing that's important about this is T Higgins the right pick in that range? Because even if the double stack maybe it's chalky, well, what if he just crushes that range and he's the best click? I actually like
Hmm.
where T Higgins goes, minus the FUD of him playing or not playing. I think he plays this year. I don't think there's a question about it. But
Hmm.
if he's the right click, it helps you with advance rates.
Hmm.
How important is that, and does that take away some of this negativity of it being the double stack being chalky?
I think it's all part of the analysis, right? Is the
Yeah.
player a good pick, right? Is the combination and the way that we're pairing it, like the way that we want to pair it, right? Like so, like the two combinations, right? The Jamar Chase. If you have Jamar Chase and T Higgins, definitely land Burrow, right? But it doesn't necessarily need to
Yeah.
be the inverse of that. And one of the things with the zero RB thing is because you are elevating your exposures, like it could be even more within that. So,
Mm.
um, like if you're gonna, it's just like it narrows your player pool quite significantly. So you just got to be conscious of it.
And it's interesting. I guess the correlation shouldn't be surprising that it gets even more chalky, right? When you say, okay, how many of these teams were zero RBs? And it's 62.6%. So it shouldn't be overly shocking, right? Because those are three expensive picks, especially last year on Burrow. How do you then go about changing this to make sure you're not too chalky?
So yeah, the way that that column works is like so within the zero RB structure, if you had Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, what's the likelihood you had T Higgins?
Mhm.
And it's just like it's just knowledge of it, how it condenses your player pool. And so like these common pairings, like as you said, like it's the they lined up perfectly for the structure. It all kind of just fit. So it just was like, okay, that's how you're playing a zero RB team with the Bengals. It's all the same way. Check, 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 check. And I think a lot of people last year knew the rules that they were supposed to follow, and
Yeah.
they just followed the rules. They got their double stacks, they got their elite players, they kind of built
Mhm.
it the way that they were supposed to.
Mhm.
And so I did feel like sometimes it is just like knowing ball and having the best picks isn't like the worst idea rationale for a pick sometimes. Maybe not all of them, but like if there's a better player and you just take the
Yeah.
better player.
I like that. I'm just
Trust
saying
me,
this question.
I correlate the hell out of it too. But yeah,
Yeah,
anyways.
I like that. I think that's a whole nother angle to the playoffs
Hmm.
too. McCaffrey asks, or he says, I've done a few 2-8-6-2 where I started six receiver. Make sure no buys overlap. I think that could be good for advance rates there for the bye week bros. He wants to know is that viable? And the question I'd ask you too to sort of preface it is, have you looked at the diminishing returns after set amount of running backs? Like, have you seen, is there diminishing returns after 6 or 7 or 8? And I'd be interested if we get some data on that maybe for next year.
Yeah, I think that's we're taking notes from this. Absolutely, some things to go at. And there's two sides to that, I would say. Like without having the data at my hands, there's the one that like there's undeniably there's diminishing returns as you get more, like the less they're going to add. But I don't know if I care about like the averages of those. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about, we're looking at multiple shots to get the two guys that are going to like drive the running backs that I don't have, or in combination, I have four or five guys that hit at different times that don't have the running backs that I don't have. So I think that that is just like one part of the structure that like I'll have to like figure out what's the best way to like dive into that data, right? Because I don't know if
Right,
averages
right,
will
right.
work.
Because you could be clicking the Tank Bigsby late, and then you could be clicking the Kyron next as your eighth. So it does sort of, and it does. There is some variance to which starting running backs get hurt too, right? in
Hmm.
which RB2s and offense then get that opportunity and get a nice share of the offense.
But yeah, so the 2862 I believe is yeah absolutely within play. So if you I wrote a second piece on Spike Week, which was just it was pretty simple, doing draft capital buckets and then the count and looking just in like a simple heat map. And so what are people doing from like a build perspective, and then how did it work? And that six is very much like it's workable. 2 years ago, it was a lot better, and last year you kind of got punished if you went like a little overboard. I think if you went start six
Mm,
right off the rip, you were definitely not a little behind. I think there is some merit in like thinking through that. This year,
yeah.
it's like they're just not as powerful as they used to be, but you still want to have wide receivers. So I think wide receivers is like requisite.
Mhm.
I draft 2862 for sure. I could share a bunch of those
Oh yeah.
teams, and they're fun, right? Because I'll get like a Josh Allen, I'll come back with a Jaden Daniels,
Mhm.
Paul Kincaid on that
Oh
team
hell yeah.
too.
Hell yeah.
So I think that they are very much in play, especially in this market where you can get like some solid volume and then some big upside swings later.
I think some one-off questions just to see, just to
Hmm.
gauge, got to gauge.
Hmm.
Any double elite QB, uh, and maybe like what's the two earliest you would go? Like with Josh Allen, are you going uh, someone in like the 70s, like Burrow, or is that
So
too much?
I did a little, like a small handful, right when the tournament opened,
Yeah.
intentionally knowing that there was going to be people that I was going to like on the right side of, and
Yep.
like I did it then. I wouldn't do it right now because
Okay.
like those picks are lost.
Yep.
Um,
ADPs are
but
sharper.
yes, exactly, right. And like we all kind of knew which ones. That kind of blows my mind. We all kind of know which ones are going to change, and we
Yeah.
all have like this like agreed upon handshake that we're going to do it
Yeah. We'll keep
slowly.
the ADPs. Yeah.
So
That's
like,
too much.
but so I did it a little at the top, but like I don't think that like so the way I see it is you could go like double elite or like elite and good quarterback and one good tight end, or you could go one elite quarterback and you could get like an elite and a good tight end. But like if you were to go 2 and 2, like I
Mm.
feel like if you're starting to pick your first running back in round 10, it just feels a little bit like a bigger stretch. But I'm sure it could work, especially like if you get some of those later guys right. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I really, as I said like way earlier, the whole point of the strategy is that you're going to dominate at quarterback and tight end, in addition to wide receiver.
Nice. It's that point of the show. Guys, if you haven't dropped a like already, drop a like. I have Billy's information in the comments as well as the description of the video. You can find his article in the description. Hit the sub. We are on the way to 2K. We're going to be doing a 24-hour live stream when we hit 2K. We hit 1,400 today. Fastest subs, fastest 100 subs we've hit since we started YouTube. So thank you guys.
24-hour live stream.
I'm
That'll
ready.
be
I'm gonna
fun.
take a day off from work. A lot of coffee, probably some beers. We'll be in rare form. That's that's for sure.
Yeah, I love that. You got to make sure Underdog's got like a contest for you ready to go, right?
I know. Or I'll have to save entries or like have 300 souls. The thing is, there's always cash games. There's always cash
Yes.
games. And that's something I'm actually trying to mix in more this year. I'm trying to do just around like 50 to 100 cash games, $25 or $50 entries, and sort of attribute some of my budget to cash games because there is uh there is less variance for good drafters. You have a better chance of being ROI positive at the end of the season with those cash games. And I think it's really smart for beginners to do that as well as attribute as much as you can to cash, especially with it's like tournament poker. If you guys play poker, like it's tough. It's tough to hit a big one. And when you do, though, you realize your edge and you're good for you're usually good for a
Hmm.
while too. So
Well,
that's
the
always cool.
interesting thing about cash games is it is a slightly different game. So you
Oh,
can
very,
deploy a
very.
little bit of a different strategy. You don't have to have as outrageous of an upside.
Hmm.
And
You're not
that,
worried about over stacking, over correlation. It's just best players in that range
mhm,
that are going to give your team points.
yeah.
Do you do any cash? Did you start with any cash, or did you just go basically right into tournament play?
Right into the tournaments.
Okay,
There's just so many low dollar ones that can get volume in all sorts of different ways.
it's true. Yeah, Underdog is good about that for sort of reaching out to all different bankrolls. And let me peek real quick, make sure that the what's it called, the Greyhound. Okay, it's not even close to filling yet. That single entry $35 tournament. Want to make sure I get a an entry in there. Where
Hmm.
are you with fast drafts versus slow drafts? Have you seen any difference in strategies from fast drafters or slow drafters?
Well, so I would call myself a fast drafter. I enjoy
Okay.
the dopamine hit that comes from like I did that 45 minutes to an hour, and like
Hmm.
and then like I completed the mission, and I like I know I feel pretty good afterwards. But I do feel that I saw that message. That was great. But the I do feel like personally, like I to get like in the Pomeranian, I had to do slows and this weekend because I
Hmm.
was out doing life, and
Yeah.
so like me personally, I've been doing different things because rather than like I sit there on the board like what am I going to try to set up now, and then a couple rounds from later I'm like,
Mm.
ooh, this is a little bit different angle that I'm going to try to do right now, and I've been enjoying that. So I do think that there's definitely like different brain when you're doing one or the other.
Yeah, for sure. I
Hmm.
think even if you are a fast drafter, I think there are cases, like you said, the palm's going to fill. Not only that, but maybe getting a couple, maybe 10 days, whatever it is, however long it takes your a slow draft to complete, extra information, which is just like a different angle to think about it. Um, I have
Also,
noticed.
so
Yeah,
I
go
was going
ahead.
to say that like I pace out my drafts throughout the summer. I'm a
Mm,
little chunk at the beginning. When there's nuggets during the summer, I like
yeah.
put some bullets then. But slow drafting is a great way to be involved, get the itch, but also not be doing the fast draft bullets that you want to do at a later date. So I
Hmm.
enjoy that aspect of it, but I definitely fast draft.
There are so many different nuances of using the slow draft. I've really come around to it because I used to define myself as like fast draft only, but now I
Hmm.
can see some of the different angles or edges that it could be beneficial. And then when you have kids and a wife, volume's not always possible, or at least extreme volume. Like last year, like 700 drafts with just fast. So
Hmm.
slows have helped me with that as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find. Do you have an example draft for us that we could pull up?
Yeah, for sure. I can just take over. I'll show you some
I can
BBM
walk you
ones.
through how to. If you go to present at the
Yeah,
bottom, yeah,
I've used
of
Streamer
course you.
before.
Perfect, perfect. I could go into my big boards too. I think I was doing a lot of. I think I was doing a lot of modified hero.
Okay, so I'm ready to share whenever.
Okay, pull it up.
How do we want to do this? I'll do it back here. This is a fun one that I did recently. So we started off
Oh, I
with
like the Evan Hull.
St. Brown and Debo. I'm going around Debo.
Hmm.
So a little skinny right there. Then I pulled Zay Flowers early to then land Lamar on ADP and Mark Andrews after.
Mhm.
So that's a really fun start. Um, then went Calvin Ridley, Brian Thomas, um, and then I started. Then I turned my attention to running backs, where we got
Mhm.
Brooks, Chase
Perfect.
Brown, Ford, Gibson,
Yep.
Algier, Khalil Herbert, Evan Hull, mixed in Trevor Lawrence in there,
Cool.
and then two more wide receivers at the end or
Perfect.
middle. Cortland Sutton's like
We
I think a good value. I like him, and then Rashad Bateman because I was betting on the Ravens.
And
Yeah,
that's funny that we mentioned the Gibson Algier click a
yeah.
little
Oh,
earlier
that's been
into the
involved. Yeah,
stream.
I'm getting
It's
there.
very sweet, very sweet.
Yeah.
I like this build a lot, and I think you do bring in a lot of the right prototype RBs. This is a random one. I think this is for the Pounders in the live stream. Are you team Khalil Herbert? Or are you team Rashawn Johnson? Because there can only be one.
So last year I was on Roshan Johnson. I thought that he was great coming out of Texas, and he's kind of I don't know, he was like okay, but I'm kind of mixing in a little bit of both. I have no real like sense. The real goal is to have one of them not be on the team and go like get traded, get
I
cut, go
agree.
somewhere else. But like it's one of those backfields. I'm like, there's opportunity, and if the Miami thing last year, like there's a couple ones where you just like, I'll take some pieces of it. Like I'm comfortable with the offense being pretty good and like
Yeah.
decently run heavy. So let's kind of roll. So I don't have a take. Why? What is the
No,
take?
that's fine. No, it's fine. No, it's fine. It's just I feel like there is a community divide sometimes on players like this. And for me, I'm like, I like the both. If one of them is
Yeah.
there, I'm typically grabbing one if I need a running back, because I do think either way they could get there if they're all on the team. But there's obviously that mega upside if one were to move on. Um,
hmm
Evan
So yeah,
Hull. Evan Hull is someone that I'm mixing in right now in a lot of contests that are filling. I have sprinkled them into BBM as well. But what's the take on Evan Hull?
I think well, it's the running back two looks like he's got a pretty good avenue to that. Over Trey Sermon. And he was the running back too, or in line last year before getting
Mhm.
hurt. So I feel like, again, we're kind of looking for those where there's maybe some news or it looks like the depth chart would align for them. Um, yeah.
And I agree. Like players like this, if you do get a little bit of that good news and maybe even expected for Evan Hull, uh, you could see a quick 2 round bump from someone going that late.
Mhm. Yeah,
That's
these are the type of guys that we're looking for some sort of like confirmation, right? That they're going to be
yeah,
the number two.
yeah,
Um, and I said this a little earlier, like Eric Gray in New York. I think that he has gotten some positive news, and he might be a similar type of play for me.
nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I think I learned a lot. Is there anything else you want to cover in here that we didn't get to?
I don't think so. I think that it's worth taking a look at. This is just like the list of the most highest owned people within the structure, and I think it's a lot logical. But I think it's all the stuff I've written so far for Spike Week is free, so
Nice.
definitely go take a
That's
look at
awesome.
that, and more will be coming. But I think we covered most of it. It's been a really good
Great.
discussion.
That's awesome, man. I'd love to have you back on when you drop any future articles. Again, you guys can find Billy on the Twitter machine at SportsVizBJ. I'll put the link again in the comments for everyone. You can find his article. Link is in the description for that. And it's also in the comments. We got put it everywhere we can. So really good work. I love articles like this that challenge the way you think and challenge the way you draft. This gets you different. Make sure you're not stagnant, and it gets you working in a different uh, frame of mind.
Yeah, the goal for me and my stuff is to have some level of complexity, but it's also approachable. So hitting in that middle ground, I'm
I
sure we could
appreciate
have.
that.
Yeah. So like this can't. It's got to be approachable. So yeah. So hopefully, if you ever have any questions, definitely reach out to me on Twitter. Happy to do research if you have if any thoughts. So yeah.
Great, guys. All right. I hope everyone has a good night, and we'll catch you on the next one. Smash the like on the way out, hit the sub. Pounders.